Yes, I have loved you with an everlasting love, an everlasting love, an everlasting love. Therefore, with loving kindness have I drawn you, drawn you, drawn you.
All right. I believe we're recording now, Mom.
Hello. This is episode 6, and it's called The People of God and the Rainbow Bridge. And I'm going to speak just for a little while just about a part of church history to kind of go further from what I talked about the last time about how the early church was and how it started to get off track. And I'm going to talk about some things having to do with the Constantine era and what happened during that time. And then most of this time with you is going to be Chastity sharing some things too over on one of her projects. So first of all the religions of the world are mankind's effort to reach God and appease him, except for true Christianity. It is God reaching to mankind and coming to save and relate to them. He comes to us through Jesus. Certain political leaders, such as Constantine, sought to incorporate worship of the God of Christianity along with his pagan deities to make an ultimate religion to appease all the gods and to exalt himself. He thought that if he pleased the God of the Christians along with all his other pagan gods, he would ensure his victory in wars and would help him keep his kingdom and remain the emperor of the Roman world. So he not only made Christianity legal, but turned it into his own type of religion based on his pagan beliefs. The architecture of these great church buildings he built was based on the pagan temples, which were still open to keep other gods being worshipped. The focal point of these church buildings was a special chair for the leader, the priest or pastor or whatever you want to say, whatever leader happened to be there. And it essentially became their throne. So it was also patterned after the monarchy as well as the pagan deities and the way the temples were. So there was that focal point of the leader being up front, and what the rest of the church of the people were an audience watching a performance instead of participating. How did God plan for his church to function instead? So the only scripture I'm going to be reading about this is God's plan of how his church was to function rather than the way it developed during the era of Constantine. And so I'm going to read out of the Net Bible. I'm going to read 1 Corinthians 12, 4 through 18. Now there are different gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are different ministries, but the same Lord. And there are different results, but the same God who produces all of them in everyone. To each person, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the benefit of all. For one person is given through the Spirit the message of wisdom, and another the message of knowledge according to the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, and to another gifts of healing by the one Spirit, to another performance of miracles, to another prophecy, and to another discernment of spirits, to another different kinds of tongues, and to another the interpretation of tongues. It is one and the same Spirit, distributing as He decides to each person who produces all these things. For just as the body is one and yet has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so too is Christ. For in one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, whether Jews or Greeks or slaves or free, we were all made to drink of the one Spirit. For in fact, the body is not a single member, but many. If the foot says, "Since I am not a hand, I am not part of the body," it does not lose its membership in the body because of that. And if the ear says, "Since I am not an eye, I am not part of the body," it does not lose its membership in the body because of that. If the whole body were an eye, what part would do the hearing? If the whole were an ear, what part would exercise the sense of smell? But as a matter of fact, God has placed each of the members in the body just as He decided.
Yeah, that makes me think about how humans want things to be a hierarchy, just like Constantine wanted to turn Christianity into a hierarchy, where it's, this person's above this person, they're better than other people. And what that those verses were talking about the person's body, they started trying to compete with each other, who's better, instead of working together, nothing gets done.
And remember what Jesus had initially told them. Don't pattern the way you are as the rest of the world.
And He also said, he who wants to be the greatest among you must be the servant of all.
Right. He said, don't let anybody act like they're better than everybody else, but then let them serve everybody else. So you see how Constantine, even though the church had been persecuted, so the Christians thought, well, this is great. Constantine is going to stop our persecution by making it legal to be a Christian. But he transformed Christianity into something other than what Jesus said about to have His church become, and that's when it began to get off track. And so I wanted to throw that in there, and then I felt like Chastity should share. She's working on a project called the Rainbow Bridge, Walking the Rainbow Bridge, and so I want her to explain it to you, and eventually she'll be able to send you links so you could see the picture she did to illustrate it.
Yes. So this project, Walking the Rainbow Bridge, it's about uniting the rainbow people with the people on the other side who don't understand. And I will have links in the description of this video once it's uploaded. And I can also show you on my phone what it looks like, basically, because I want to describe this. I want to describe the purpose of this book and the cover here. So I don't know if you can see that, but here we have, it's nighttime, there's a rainbow, there's the white people, and then there's the people of color. So what we have here is Walking the Rainbow Bridge, creating conversations for diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have the rainbow people, the people on the other side, and the Great Divide. And the idea here is that the rainbow is the bridge that people have to walk to cross this big canyon, basically, this big old hole there. And this is something that is not only nice, it's something that has to be done. Because for far too long, Christianity has been at war with other religions. They've been at war with the LGBT community, and these things have to be reconciled. Otherwise, they're just like those parts of the body that are all fighting each other. If the person just dies, the body is all fighting itself.
Right.
And this project was started in June of 2025, just a few months ago. For my final class project, I didn't get a very good grade on it, but that wasn't the point. There was a much more important message going on with this. I'm going to read some of the titles of the chapters that I have here, and then I'm going to be sharing one of these chapters. I'm going to just be reading it So hopefully you'll get an idea, the sense of what I'm going for with this, because I'm trying to unite people. I'm trying to bring understanding and conversation, what I'm trying to do here. So we have building the bridge, I was born this way, the LGBTQIA plus suicide epidemic, the asexual minority, the population conspiracy theory, can someone be gay and a Christian, the history of Pride Month, the alphabet people, autism and the misunderstood rainbow, consistently pro-life, what the gay marriage debate is really about, why I don't use the women's restroom, my immigrant best friend, the problem with nationalism. And chapter 15, the latest chapter on here, is love the sinner, hate the sin. And this is a topic that I have to read this one, I have to talk about this one, because I've heard that phrase in my life more times than I could possibly count. Probably over 100 times at least. Because I'm going to read this, and then my mom and I are going to discuss. But also, if you have any commentary or any questions while I'm doing this, don't hesitate to interrupt if you need to. Okay. So many times in my life, I have heard the phrase, love the sinner, hate the sin. On the surface, it sounds good because you are saying that you love someone but disagree with what they do. But this calls into question both the intent behind the person speaking it and who they are saying it to. Interestingly, the only time I can remember hearing love the sinner, hate the sin is when Christians are judging people for being gay or transgender. It doesn't really work very well in this context because the person doesn't know what the sin is that they are talking about. Imagine if you said love the black person but hate the sin. This statement implies that you think someone born with black skin has somehow sinned or erred in some way, as if they could have done something different and been born with a different skin color. I know what you'll say next, but being gay is a choice. First, it isn't a choice in any meaningful sense. Second, if it were a choice, it would actually be a defined choice. Third, you know what is a choice? Shutting up when you don't know what you're talking about. I will use two examples to illustrate the point I am making. Judging the gay person. A person finds out that someone they know is gay. Then they start talking about hating their sin or their sinful lifestyle. But the truth is, a straight person does not know what sin they are speaking about. Are they speaking about the sin of being attracted to the same sex, which is not an action? Are they talking about a specific sexual action the person is doing? Are they in their house watching them as they do this action by themselves or with their partner and judging them for doing it wrong? What specifically are they even talking about? Judging the transgender person. Suppose someone discovers that someone is transgender or simply assumes it because they don't look like what they think a man or woman should look like. Some thoughts they might have include, that person is too tall to be a woman. They must really be a man pretending to be a woman. Someone call the police. That woman has a deep voice. I bet she is really a man. That woman has small boobs. I bet it's a man. That woman has facial hair. It's a man. Protect the children. That man has boobs. It must have been a woman, but it has a beard. What the hell is it? That man sounds like a woman. I bet she tried to act like a man because she was such an ugly woman. These are just a few examples of the things I have heard or read. Most of the time, these things are said on Facebook or YouTube comments on a news story about someone who was just trying to use the restroom or play a sport. But what I have noticed is that while gay people are judged for actions, whether real or imaginary, transgender people are judged for how their body looks, whether they are being judged by how tall or short they are, the sound of their voice, or the size of their breasts. Why are people staring at other people's chests so much? The point of all these sayings is to insult people for how they look. What is the sin they are hating as they claim to love the sinner? Wait, is that the woman the woman who grows facial hair due to polycystic ovary syndrome? What about these thoughts or words about the size of their breasts? Is having a certain size of boobs a sin? What is the correct breast size? And how does someone make their boobs bigger or smaller? More context is needed even to know what the sin is that they are referring to. Most of the time, this person is very vague in what the sin is. That is because they don't really know any information about the person they are judging. This phrase is used mostly to strangers whom they don't know. When speaking of sin, the context usually implies that they think the person has made an error or is doing something morally wrong. These two definitions get mixed up. I will call these definitions A and B. Sin version A, making a wrong move, such as moving a chess piece that causes the loss of the game, or forgetting a semicolon in a C program that you are compiling, or perhaps missing the mark when you throw a ball or shoot an arrow at a target. Sin version B, doing something that hurts someone, such as murder, lying, stealing, or committing adultery. In parentheses, having sex with someone other than your spouse. I put that there because people don't know what adultery is. I thought it was becoming an adult. That's what I thought when I was a kid.
Sometimes that seems like a sin, doesn't it?
It does. Why are adults so sinful? Sin versions A and B are not the same thing, and they are not compatible. Sin A refers to a mistake made when playing a game or doing some action that has no harmful consequences. Sin B means that you did something that hurt a person, either permanently by killing them or at least temporarily, such as stealing their money that you can theoretically pay back. Interestingly, when people say love the sinner, hate the sin, they are not usually talking about a type B of sin. They don't usually say it about murderers, rapists, thieves, or liars. No, instead they call the police, bring a lawsuit against them, or cut off contact with them. Do they talk about loving these people? No, they are too busy trying to protect themselves from this person who has hurt them or their friends or family. But more importantly, can you still love someone while you are posting on Facebook about how much you hate someone's sin? It is kind of a hard thing to balance. Love and hate don't usually go in the same sentence. How about just loving the sinner and leaving it at that? But once again, you are calling someone a sinner as if somehow they are more in the wrong than you are. It is still hypocritical to speak of your neighbor as someone you love in spite of their being a sinner. When a person says this, they are implying that they are perfect and somehow not being a sinner, and this gives them the right to call someone else a sinner. And I quote Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 5 here. Do not judge so that you will not be judged. For by the standard you judge, you will be judged, and the measure you use will be the measure you receive. Why do you see the speck in your brother's eye, but fail to see the beam of wood in your own? Or how can you say to your brother, let me remove the speck from your eye, while there is a beam in your own? You hypocrite, first remove the beam from your own eye, and then you can see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. It's also worth mentioning that the statement, love the sinner, hate the sin, only applies in the context of Christianity. Rarely do non-Christians ever use the word sin. However, the culture, most of which has been raised in one of the denominations of Christianity, understands that you are judging them, even if they are not sure what they are being judged for. The only advice I can give here is to stop using this phrase, unless you are prepared to be very specific in what way you love someone, and also what sin is that you hate. And please choose a different sin once in a while. The LGBTQIA plus people are tired of being picked on as if we are the only sinners. You would be wise to look at what sins you and other many self-identified Christians are doing while distracting themselves with the sins of others so that they don't have to change their own behavior. Remove all the sin from your own life, then we will talk.
Yeah, that was my favorite part was, let's pick a new sin for
us. Choose a different one. And about that, see, here's the thing. People have an easier time forgiving somebody for lying, stealing, murdering, anything. And they talk about forgiveness and they try to witness to them and get them saved and all that. But if someone's gay, cut off all contact. Have nothing to do with them. Keep your kids away from them. They treat a gay or transgender person as worse than every other type of sin. There could be a literal rapist going around doing things, but but let's not worry about that person. Let's pick on the trans woman who just wants to use the restroom. That's what they do instead.
Yeah, there's kind of a mess going on out there with that.
Yeah.
By the way, today I'm wearing a shirt that says equality. And it has a whole list of other words here.
Yeah.
Would you like to read those
Yes.
other words?
We have love, peace, inclusion, kindness, change, diversity, unity, compassion, justice, and what's the last one? I can't see. Hope.
Hope.
Okay, hope. Yeah, I can't see.
I'm always wearing
Yeah,
some special
a
shirt.
lot of good words there. Yeah, and there is one thing I wanted to follow up with what you were reading, what we were talking about earlier. So here's a way you can know the difference between true Christianity, as my mom was talking about, compared to the man-made religion. And I want to illustrate this with a point. For example, my shirt has these squares. Now the square is one of the very interesting shapes because the square is a unique shape that's man-made. While it could theoretically exist in nature, you almost never see 90-degree angles in nature. You find 30 or 60-degree angles, you find a lot of circular objects, but humans, they tile floors as squares and design things with square grids because it's easier to measure. It's all for the math to be easier and for them to price things too. That's why they do it, for economic reasons, basically. And here's how you know a religion's man-made. When you start seeing that hierarchy, what we were talking about, when you start seeing, well, this person, they're the boss, they're the leader, they're the boss, they decide what goes. And what that turns a religion into is that turns it basically into Walmart. Because that's how Walmart operates. That's how all grocery stores, that's how all businesses operate. You either have a store manager, the store leads, and you have coaches and team leads, which are basically, you have managers, assistant managers, etc. And so I'm at the lowest end of the totem pole when it comes to Walmart. I'm just an overnight stalker. I do what I'm told. But that's how a business operates.
Right.
And unfortunately, Christianity in America has become a business where it's all about, they just claim to be a certain religion so they can have their building on this land, not have to pay taxes, they're tax exempt, and it's entirely by talking people into giving them money. It's a business. So what's going to happen under that environment, because you can't serve God and money at the same time, then they're not going to include LGBT people in the church, because as soon as you start trying to be inclusive and truly start loving the gay people like Jesus taught, you're going to upset some of the people in your church that donate money. You're going to lose people, and your church will collapse as soon as you start actually trying to be loving. So basically, what it's sad to say that when you start really trying to live like Jesus, you end up broke, because it's just true. Because what brings in the money is telling people whatever makes them feel good by telling them that whatever they're already doing is okay. And in regard to the rainbow people, the church has hurt them a lot. People who may even be well-intentioned, who they think that somehow by cutting off all contact and kicking their friends and family, and including their own children, out of their life, that somehow they're doing them a favor. I know in their mind they think, oh, well, they just need to go and live in their sin and they'll come back to God. And actually, that's not what will happen. What will happen is God will go and find that lost sheep that you kicked out. What people don't realize is that the sheep wasn't lost. The other sheep kicked it out. That's what happened. Because how many times are Christians referred to as the flock or the sheep? And that's what it is God will go and find that person, but don't scare them off in the first place. That's what they're doing. They're scaring people off. And I think I was scared off for many years, and so were other people that I've known. They were just scared. And some people, they find a way, they find an affirming church somewhere that accepts them, or they just join a different religion, or they just end up being an atheist. And and here's the thing. what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 7 about not judging, for the standard you measure, you'll be judged. And the thing is, this is just my opinion, but honestly, while we haven't explored yet in our podcast the whole topic of hell, heaven and hell and the afterlife, we haven't really gone into that yet.
Yeah.
I think one thing that's very clear is that when somebody is forced to give up their faith, or they never come to belief in Jesus or whatever it is, because of the way Christians have acted, I just have a little question for you to ponder. Who is God going to judge on Judgment Day?
Mm-hmm.
Those people who were abused and scared off, or the people who did it to them?
Yeah.
Just think about that for a second. Because,
It makes me think about the Pharisees.
yes,
And Jesus pointed out to them that they were being a stumbling block to people.
mm-hmm.
And they were expecting them to be perfect according to their own standards, but then they weren't helping them. They were putting burdens on them they couldn't bear, and then they weren't even trying to help them. And he was pretty much saying that they were the ones that were going to face the real penalties because of what they were doing to the other people.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's, and also, see, this message of love the sinner, hate the sin, part of the reason people repeat this so often is because on the surface, it sounds good. It sounds like, well, yeah, I love this person, I just disagree with what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I feel that way about a lot of people sometimes. I care about them, but there's things that they're doing that I don't like. But I think the phrase is problematic because I may be thinking it, but it's kind of like, as Thumper the Rabbit said in Bambi, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say nothing at all. Because all it really does is makes those people feel like when you start criticizing them for their sins, you know what? That's God's job. Let God deal with them about that. Let them live it out how they have to, because you don't know them. You don't know their story. And also, let's just be clear. You don't know who's having sex with who, when, who's in a relationship with who. You don't know any of that stuff unless they tell you, and they probably won't tell you, especially if you have a reputation for judging them for their sins. They're not going to talk to you, so you know nothing.
And what do you need to know?
Exactly. And why are people staring at people's breasts so much? What is with that? I can't get over that, because people do that all the time.
I don't know. I don't do it.
Yeah, I know. Oh man. Yeah. Oh man. We covered a lot here. We talked about a lot.
This is what I felt like we were supposed to do today. That I was just supposed to share that little bit.
Yeah.
To make some progress in learning about the church and what's happened with it, and then that Chastity was supposed to start sharing about her project that she's doing about the Rainbow Bridge, and so this is what God wanted us to share today. Yes,
because the people need to come together. We're all equal, and just like Galatians 3:28, there's neither male or female, Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male or female. Like they're just we're all one.
Yeah,
we're all the same thing.
And who's the head of the church? Is it the pastor? No, it's Jesus.
Yeah.
And we don't need to act like there's anybody that's the top dog, like Chandler was saying about the Walmart or these other businesses. The churches are running things like a business, and their whole they want to please the people that are there, so they'll that are rich enough to put money just to keep it going. That's not at all the way God planned things to be. And so that's why we're trying to get back to what Jesus really wanted and be a true church. And this is why God had put on my heart to eventually start a house church. But see, this is all leading up to that so that we can please God by letting it be run the way He would do it.
Yeah, and there is one more thing I have to say. So I'm going to make a comparison to the Grinch Who Stole Christmas here. Because remember in the Grinch Who Stole Christmas how he stole everyone's presents overnight.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought that if he took away people's presents, then he would have stolen Christmas itself.
Mm-hmm.
But no, people still celebrated. They still sang and danced. And then the Grinch realized Christmas doesn't come from a store. Perhaps Christmas means a little more. And what I want to say about the American Christianity here is, once the institutions and these church buildings and the tax exempt status and all these things that people think are Christianity are removed, just like those presents in that Dr. Seuss story.
Mm-hmm.
Once all that's removed, then people will truly find out what Christianity is, because it will be the only thing that there is left. As long as people have their presence or they have their fancy church buildings and their pews to sit in,
mm-hmm.
they're going to think that's the church. And they're looking for the formula that has pagan origins, that
mm-hmm.
Constantine got started, that what they think Christianity is. But that's not it, because if you look at Jesus, washing his disciples' feet, talking about being the servant, they wanted him to rise up as a military leader to kill the Romans, is what they wanted him
mm-hmm.
to do. But he's like, nah, I ain't going to do that. He would just like, let's just love your neighbor as yourself, be a servant if you want to be great. Just that was his message. And so it becomes very clear to see whether you're seeing something man-made like the square, or whether you're seeing something that exists that is not man-made.
Yeah, by the way, turns out in my studies, Constantine was the one that started the tax-exempt thing.
Oh, interesting.
Like, you support my buildings and my church and my religion, then you don't have to pay taxes if you're part of my man-made religion.
Right.
And so that's where that started, and it's still going on today, and a lot of people just form a religion just so they can make money and not have to pay taxes.
Absolutely. In fact, I used to be part of Lakeland Community Church,
mm-hmm.
and they had missionaries that went to China and that kind of thing. And what was interesting is that there are quote-unquote churches in China that are sponsored by the Communist Party. But they are teaching, they're not teaching Christianity, they're not teaching, they have their own Chinese Bibles that the Communist Party produces and teaches things their way as they want to teach.
And they change it, they translate it opposite of what the original Bible says.
Yeah, see, what the Chinese government has done, they've done the exact same thing Constantine did. They've turned it into a state religion.
Exactly.
And, people talk about separation of church and state in America, for example.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I think we need to do. We need to...
Well, that was to protect the churches from being controlled by the state.
Right. Unfortunately, it didn't work, because as long as the government... is saying, oh, well, your religion has to teach these things, and you can't do this. It's just like nonprofit organizations; they're limited. Oh, you can't endorse this in politics, or you lose your tax exempt 501c3 status.
And see, the thing is, preachers can be told by the government what they're allowed to preach.
Yes.
If they hang on to that tax exempt. So, in other words, they're part of the government dictates, and that's not Jesus able to work through his church. That's people in power and trying to control everything and tell people what to believe. There's some definite reforms that need to be made to get back to true Christianity.
Yes, and unfortunately, part of it is that the government wants to control the church, which they can, as long as they have this whole tax thing. They can hold it over their head constantly.
Right.
But that's not the only problem that Christianity faces. It's also the fact that they have been so harmful to the LGBT people.
Right.
And for that reason alone, a lot of people are leaving, and they're just joining other religions. And it's so a lot of them, they're just trying to fight against it so much, because what it started out as may have been a good thing, but what it has turned into in the past time, especially recently, is just horrible.
Well, now do we need to try to end on another podcast?
Okay, yeah.
It's pretty heavy when we're talking about this stuff.
Yes. Okay. So I have some news here. Okay. So now, walking the Rainbow Bridge, like I was sharing with you, while it's the book's not really complete yet. However, all of the chapters I have so far are on my blog at chastitywhiterose.com. There's also another backup site that I could share the link to. And also, the Chandler's Honesty series. I recently collected all 6 parts previously published into one book. And so soon that will be available on Amazon. And so that one is called Chandler's Honesty, Conversations with a Unicorn and Animal Sanctuary. Because that kind of sums up what all of them were, but all collected, that book is close to 200 pages with all the parts combined. It's a very large book.
So now these things will be available for people that want to read more about them.
Yeah, so I just submitted for a paperback to be available, so people can get the whole story at a pretty good price that way. Because people need to read that story, because a lot of people haven't yet.
Right.
So yes, as always, give us your questions, comments on any of our videos of our podcast here, and let us know what future topics you would like us to address. And we also will do more episodes, usually on a weekly basis, with what God tells us to do here.
That's right. We're just happy that God's shown us what to do and that He can work through us like this. And so we're glad that it can go out, and whoever needs to hear it, I'm sure God's going to make it available for them to hear it and to benefit from everything that we have to share.
Yep.
So thank you so much for joining us today.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.